Hi everyone, welcome back to the GYADC for another episode of the Dairy Academy. I'm Laura.
And I'm Marika, and today we have here the Grober nutrition team. Could you guys all tell us about who you are and what you do here at Grober?
I'm Lauren. I'm the Technical and Operations Specialist here at Grober. My main work emphasis is on lab work and nutrition.
I'm Amber. I am a nutrition and technical associate, and I tend to work in the lab, work on least cost formulations, and help with research and development.
And I'm Amanda. I am the senior nutritionist at Grober and work with our team at large to help plan and conduct our various research trials over the summer. And today we're going to talk a little bit about calf digestion, some ingredients that we use in our milk replacers, more notably skim and whey proteins and whey powder, and what that means in terms of calf digestion.
So here we are with Lauren. Would you like to tell us a little bit what you're here to show us today?
Sure. So I thought I would kind of break down what our different milk protein sources are within our milk replacers. And I think it's really important to kind of see the true breakdown of where these byproducts really come from. Not only from a quality perspective to see how that milk replacer can really allow for as much of a similar composition to whole milk as possible, but also for animal digestion as well, to make sure that that gut is fully digesting nutrients as best as possible. So what we have in front of us are three main protein sources from milk that we use in our Grober products. We can see we have a skim milk, a whey, and a whey protein concentrate. When looking at all three, they do look pretty similar to one another, but really what's going to come down in terms of how they're unique from one another is really a concept of where they come from and how they're produced.
So how do we get skim milk?
So, with skim milk, there is actually a common misconception that skim milk is a watered down version of whole milk. This actually isn't the case. When we take a look at skim milk, it actually is a byproduct of butter or cream production. So a better visual to kind of see where we get this product is if we were to kind of envision a glass of whole milk sitting on the table, and you can see the X's and O's kind of represent the different components within milk. The X's here being the fat components and the O's being the non-fat, so the protein, lactose, vitamins and minerals and that kind of thing. If you were to let this sit for a long period of time, you'll actually see a separation of that fat and other components due to its relationship with water. So you'll see that that fat is going to separate and rise to the top, and what you're left with is essentially all those still very essential components of milk, so those proteins and lactose and that kind of thing, but the only difference is that fat being eliminated, and that's how we get skim.
So now that we know a little bit about skim milk, could you tell us about what whey is?
Sure. Yeah, so whey is similar to skim in the sense that it is also a byproduct. The only difference is, unlike it being produced from butter and cream production, it's actually a byproduct of cheese production. So the main thing with cheese is you're wanting to create a solid, edible product from milk components. So through that process, you're wanting to segregate those solid components from those liquid components in the milk. And through that process, adding enzymes such as rennin to the milk through that process, you are separating that liquid component, and that liquid component is the whey.
And finally, could you tell us a little bit about whey protein concentrate?
For sure. So whey protein concentrate, as the name would suggest, would be a protein concentrated from the whey that we just made in the previous video. So essentially that whey product that we now have from cheese making is very high in lactose. So it hovers around kind of 70 to 75% lactose and around 12 to 13% protein. So essentially we take that whey from previous, eliminate that lactose, and you now have the protein concentrated from the whey.
A little bit more about what goes into the milk replacer. Amber, could you tell us a little bit more about processing and how that affects the quality of the milk replacer?
Yeah, so we can start by talking about skim and pasteurization temperature. So when the skim's pasteurized at a lower temperature, this leaves all the casein molecules, those protein molecules, the same size that they were before. But as we start to use a higher temperature, the casein molecules start to denature. So you can kind of think of this like popping popcorn. So you start with a kernel, so our low heat, nothing happens to the kernel, it stays as a kernel. But as you start to use more heat, they pop into popcorn and end up in a different shape, and therefore are digested differently than how the original digested sample.
Are there any other nutritional concerns with milk replacer ingredients?
Yeah, so one other thing that you can see is with your whey, when it is being turned into the whey protein concentrate, you can end up with some scorched particles. So this is something that you can actually see in the milk replacer, or sorry, in the ingredient. There'll be little black particles, little burnt particles, and you'll be able to see these by rinsing, by mixing it and rinsing it through a small filter, and you can see these burnt particles. And something like this would have an impact on the calf because it could lead to more sandy, gritty feeling in their mouth, and the taste of it may not be the same. Another problem you can have too when your skim milk isn't clotting properly, so say we used the high heat and it wasn't clotted properly, they're not going to be able to digest this the same. So this will come out in their scours.
So why do we use different ingredients in our milk replacers?
Yeah, so it kind of all depends on a few different things. So it could be based on pricing, on ingredient availability, or it could also be just based on the formula type. So sometimes the formula that you have, you want to make it a little bit cheaper, and you could supplement some protein with plant protein instead of having just milk protein. So you can make that cost a little bit less and still have the same protein quantity. And then it just depends on the formulation type. So somebody may want a whey-based formulation versus a skim-based formulation.
Wow, that was a lot of information. How do you guys at Grober ensure that quality ingredients go in the milk replacer every time?
Yeah, so our quality assurance lab will receive samples of all of our dairy, our fat ingredients, premixes for vitamins, minerals, etc. And we'll test everything that comes in, look at the certificate of analysis and ensure that the nutrient specs are being met, so for instance protein and fat, but also quality parameters such as scorch, like Amber mentioned, or the burnt particles, we test for that. Solubility, how well does the ingredient mix, which in turn will affect how well your milk replacer will mix. Other testing that we do in our lab include pH, the stability of our fat emulsions, and we also do testing on our finished milk replacers as well. So we want to make sure that we're meeting tag value for protein and fat, and that the product is mixing as it should according to product type. So myself, Amber, and Lauren will take this information into account in preparing our different formulations before sending them out into production.
That's awesome to know that Grober is taking all those precautions to give Canadian young animal producers the best quality milk replacer.
So thank you so much. You guys gave us so much great information, and I'm sure there's still a lot to know.
Thanks for having us here today, ladies.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week on the Dairy Academy.